Prudent Scholars in association with Goa Headmasters Association.
Hello everyone, wishing you a very happy and healthy day ahead. Energy. In class 9, we have already learnt what is energy. The definition of energy is the capacity to do work. Energy is defined as the ability to do work. If we have more energy, we are able to do more work. It is something which can be conserved and can be converted from one form to another form. Let us see which are those forms. The different forms of energy are electrical energy, heat energy, potential energy, kinetic energy, atomic energy, chemical energy, and so on. In today's class, we are going to start with the chapter Sources of Energy, which has a weightage of 3 marks for Goa board exam. So to begin with, let's know what is the main definition of source of energy. A source of energy is the one which can provide adequate amount of energy in a convenient form. I'll give you one example. In a day, I carry out many activities. I walk, I run, I write something, I play, and so on. For carrying out all these activities, I need energy. Besides this, there are so many processes that are taking place within my body. They are thinking process, digestion of the food, circulation of the blood, heart beating, and so on. Again, for all these processes, there is a need of energy. Where do I get this energy from? I get this energy from the food that I eat. So here, food becomes the source of energy for me. So basically, a source is something which will supply or provide energy for carrying out any activities or for carrying out any task. So we should remember, when we talk about any source of energy, it is something that will supply the energy. In a daily activities, when I look outside, I can see so many tasks that are going on. Like, I can see vehicles are running on the road, I can see some machines are working, or I can see in my house refrigerator is working, television is working, and there are so many other appliances that are working. Where do all these things receive energy? They receive the energy from various sources of energy. These sources are sun, ocean, coal, wind, water, biomass, natural gas, oil, and so on. So whatever sources we have, they supply the maximum amount of energy for all the tasks that are to be carried. The objectives of today's lesson are to know the various sources of energy, to study the characteristics of a good source of energy, to understand the difference between conventional and non-conventional sources of energy, to study the conventional sources of energy like fossil fuels, thermal energy, and hydel energy. So in today's lesson, we are going to cover all these points and we are going to study all this matter which is listed. So let us move on. Initially, let's try to understand what is a good source of energy. I'll give you one example. I'm going to give you a task of cooking a food. You know, for cooking food, we have so many options as sources. We can cook food using wood as a source of energy. We can cook food using LPG. We can cook food using some electricity like induction or microwave, or maybe some kerosene stove, and so on. So out of this, we are going to compare with only 2 sources of energy. I'll give you one source as using wood as a source and cook the food, Or second option I am going to give you, using LPG you have to cook food. Remember, when I am going to use or when you are going to use wood as a source of energy, or you may use LPG as a source of energy, in both cases your task will get completed, that is your food will get cooked. But what is required, or if I ask you out of this at the end which is a good source of energy, then definitely your answer will be LPG is a good source of energy. Now, why did you conclude this? Why have you reached to this conclusion that out of wood and LPG, LPG is a good source of energy? You must have listed some properties of these two fuels. Like when you used wood as a source or wood as fuel, you found that there is a lot of smoke released in the air, or there is some residue or ash that is left behind. Or you must have observed some unburned carbon particles which are released in the air. Even you will observe that utensils must have turned black. Whereas when you will use LPG as a fuel, you will find that LPG is a very clean fuel. It will not leave any residue, it will not give out any smoke, your utensils will be very clean. Also, the operation, the use of this LPG is very easy. You can control the amount of energy that you are going to supply very easily. So, by comparing all these points, you will come to the conclusion that out of wood and LPG, you are going to prefer LPG as a good fuel. So, like this, we have many sources of energy, and out of these sources, we have to always consider a good source of energy for our use. So, let us know what are the good sources and what are their characteristics. So, characteristics or the qualities of a good source of energy. First, it should be environment friendly. What is the meaning of this? Environment friendly means it should not cause any damage to the environment. It should not pollute the air, it should not leave any residue, ash, etc. so that it should be environment friendly. It should not cause any harm or damage to the environment. Second point, whatever source we are going to choose, it should be economical. What is the meaning of word economical? Economical means it should be cheap, it should be cost effective, it should be affordable for each and every person. Third, it should be easily accessible. Its operation, its usage, its control should be very easy, and it should be easily reachable. Next point, it should be easy to store and transport. There should not be any difficulty or risk in order to store or transport this source of energy. And fifth one, very importantly, it should have high calorific value. Calorific value means the amount of heat generated when you are going to burn the unit mass of that particular source of energy. So, we are going to choose a source of energy in such a way that by using minimum amount of this source or this fuel, we are going to derive more amount of heat. So, while choosing any source of energy, we need to consider maximum of these points. So, these were the characteristics of good source of energy. Now, let us go further for the sources of energy and let us know more in detail about this. Basically, these sources of energy are categorized into conventional sources and non-conventional sources. Now, what are these conventional sources? Conventional sources are the sources which are already familiar to all of us. People have been using them from last so many years. They are not new to us, they are being used traditionally, like fossil fuels, coal, petroleum products, water from which we derive hydroelectric energy, biomass and wind. So, these are the examples of conventional sources which are traditionally being used in our country. Now, the problem is, as per the increasing demands of energy by the people, these conventional sources of energy are not sufficient to satisfy our energy needs. So, now we have to think some more and newer options for the source as the sources of energy, and they are called as non-conventional sources. So these non-conventional sources include sun, I mean to say solar energy. Then energy can be obtained from sea or ocean like tidal energy, wave energy, ocean thermal energy, or it may be geothermal energy or nuclear energy. So we are going to learn about the conventional sources and non-conventional sources in this chapter. In today's class, we are going to discuss about the conventional sources of energy. So let's move further with the conventional sources of energy. These conventional sources of energy, they are again subdivided as renewable sources and non-renewable sources. Renewable sources means the sources which are inexhaustible, which are formed every day. They are available in plenty, like water, biomass and wind. What about non-renewable sources? Non-renewable sources are the sources which are exhaustible, which we have very limited in supply and they are going to get over. They require, non-renewable sources, they require millions of years for their formation. So conventional sources are divided as renewable and non-renewable sources. So under renewable we are going to learn about water, biomass and wind, and non-renewable we are going to deal with fossil fuels. So let's start with this non-renewable source, fossil fuel. So fossil fuel, it is one of the most widely used sources of energy. Why this fossil fuel is very popular and why it is used widely? The reason is, first is it has very high calorific value. It is easily available so far and it can be used very easily. That's why fossil fuels are very popular and they are widely being used for many of the tasks. The examples of these fossil fuels are coal, petroleum and natural gas. The question is, how are fossil fuels formed? We know fossil fuels are formed inside the earth from the remains of plants and animals after millions of years. Now whatever dead plants or animals are there, they get buried under soil or maybe under water, and after millions of years, under pressure or due to very high temperatures, they get converted into fossil fuels. So formation of fossil fuels takes millions of years. It takes a very long period. Okay? So fossil fuels are non-renewable. The reason is they are formed after millions of years. That is the reason why these fossil fuels should be conserved and they should be used judiciously. If we want to have balance between the formation of fossil fuel and its usage, the time has come wherein we have to conserve these fossil fuels and we have to use them very wisely. Let's talk about the disadvantages of fossil fuels. We already discussed what are the advantages. Let us talk about what are the disadvantages of fossil fuels. First, fossil fuels release harmful gases and particles on burning which cause air pollution. You can see the pics. We are very familiar with this. We observe that the gases which are given out from the vehicles or the harmful gases which are released from the factories which use petroleum products as their fuel, they give out very harmful gases and this causes air pollution. The very common and popular diseases which people suffer these days like asthma and other lung disorders, they are the result of these gases which are released by burning fossil fuels. The next disadvantage is burning of fossil fuels releases sulfur and nitrogen oxides which cause acid rain. Now what is acid rain? Whenever these fossil fuels are burned, the oxides of sulfur and nitrogen which are released, they accumulate in the top layer of the atmosphere. During rain, when the rainwater comes, these oxides, they get interfere with that rainwater, and when that rain reaches to the earth, it's not plain water, but it is acid, which we call it as acid rain. Now what are harmful effects of this acid rain? When this acid rain reaches to the soil, there are n number of microorganisms, useful microorganisms which increase the fertility of the soil. They get harmed from this acid rain. They cannot survive due to this acid rain, and in turn all the crops and the plants, they are affected. Secondly, when this acid rain rushes to the water bodies, it harms very badly all the aquatic life. Also, this acid rain affects the buildings. We know the very famous monument building, that is Taj Mahal, has been corroded due to this acid rain. Also, this acid rain are going to corrode the metals which are exposed to the rain, mainly the bridges and other structures. Then next disadvantage of using fossil fuels is, burning of fossil fuels releases a large amount of carbon dioxide gas, which increases the temperature of the atmosphere and causes global warming. Now we know carbon dioxide is a warm gas. It is going to release the heat, and due to this heat, we know the effect of global warming, that is the temperature of the earth is increasing, and there are so many effects of this global warming, which are heat waves, wildfires, floods, cyclones. These all are the effects of this global warming. So we have completed one source of energy, that is fossil fuel. Okay, we have studied what is fossil fuel, how it is formed, what are the examples, what are the advantages, and what are the disadvantages. Okay, so let's move on to the next source. Before going to actual concept, let me tell you about what is power plant. An installation or plant where electricity is generated is called a power plant. This is the simple meaning of power plant. Any installation or any setup wherein there will be generation of electric power is known as power plant. Now for our discussion or for our syllabus, we have to discuss two types of power plants, that is thermal power plant and hydel power plant. In both these types of power plants, the basic concept is there will be generation of electric power. Okay. Now there is one very common concept that is involved in this. In thermal power plant, the electricity will be generated using the heat, and in hydel power plant, electricity will be generated using water. That will be the basic difference. But common factor is, in both the power plants, electricity will be generated. There is one more basic and common concept which I want to stress upon. All the power plants are going to use turbine. Now this turbine, as you can see in the picture, it will be installed in the power plant. Now what is the concept? The concept is, by any means this turbine needs to be moved. When the turbine is rotated, the mechanical energy will be converted into electrical energy. I repeat, turbine needs to be moved, and when the turbine is rotated, the mechanical energy is converted into electrical energy. Now we have to choose the option in what ways turbine needs to be moved. Okay, we can pass some heat energy, turbine can be moved, electricity can be generated. We can use water, turbine will be moved, electricity will be generated. We can even use the wind, turbine is moved and the electricity will be generated. So the basic concept is turbine, movement of the turbine, and mechanical energy to electrical energy. Okay. Now we will go to actual thermal power plant. As I said, in thermal plant, whatever the word thermal tells us is about the heat. So there will be conversion of heat energy into electricity. So, let me show you one pic which tells us the sources of electricity in India. If you see very carefully at this pic, you will find that around 61% of the electricity in India is generated from the source coal. The major amount of electricity is generated from coal. Then around 15% is from hydro, that is from water. Around 13% is from the renewable energy sources like wind or maybe some ocean energy. Then 9% is from the natural gas and a very small portion is obtained from the nuclear energy. Okay. So, basically our country depends or it generates the maximum amount of electricity from the coal. Let us see about the thermal power station. A thermal power station or a thermal power plant is the plant in which heat energy is converted into electrical power. Now, what is the fuel that is used in this? The fuel used is the coal. Now, I will tell you how it works. Using coal as the fuel, water will be heated. After water gets heated, the water will be converted into steam. The steam is passed over the turbine. The turbine starts moving and the mechanical energy is converted into electrical energy. Okay. This is the simple working of thermal power plant. So, fossil fuel like coal is burnt in power stations to heat up the water to produce steam. This steam is used to rotate the turbine, thereby converting mechanical energy into electricity. So, this is how the thermal power plant works. We have to remember the source that is used in thermal power plant is coal. There will be conversion of heat energy into electrical energy. So, using coal, water will be heated, water will be converted into steam. When steam is passed over the turbine, turbine will be moved and the mechanical energy will be converted into electrical energy. So, this is in short about thermal power plant. These are some of the examples of thermal power plants in India. We have many thermal power plants. I have listed some of them. So, Tata Power Trombay thermal plant, Udupi thermal power plant, then Vindhyachal thermal power station in Madhya Pradesh and Mundra thermal power station in Gujarat. So, these are some of the examples of thermal power plants in our country. Now, one point we need to remember here. Thermal power plants are always located near the coal or oil fields. This point is important as far as your exam questions are concerned. Thermal power plants are always located near the coal or oil fields. Why it is so? The reason is when these power plants, thermal power plants are set up near the coal or oil fields, the transportation of this coal or oil to the thermal power plant becomes easy. And whatever electricity is generated, the transmission of that electricity becomes very easy later on. So, in order to avoid any transportation difficulty or maybe some environment related problems, always these thermal power plants are situated near the coal or oil fields. Okay? So, the reason is transmission of electricity is more efficient than transporting coal or petroleum over the same distance. That is the reason why these thermal power plants are always set up near oil or coal fields. Let us know about the advantages of thermal power plant. We have already discussed that in our country the maximum amount of electricity is generated using the coal. So, the first advantage here is large amount of electricity can be generated in thermal power plants. So, this is the first advantage. Second, the fuel used, that is the coal, is quite cheap. So, we can afford the use of coal in thermal power plants. So, these are two advantages of having thermal power plant. Does it have any disadvantage? Yes. When burning of coal is involved, certainly there will be pollution. So, the first disadvantage is it causes air pollution. And secondly, the fuel used, that is coal. We cannot forget that coal is a non-renewable source. Today it is available with us, but after few years we may fall short of this source. So that's why it is called as non-renewable, and we need to take care about this point. Okay? So these are the disadvantages of thermal power plant. Now we have to go for the next power plant, that is hydro power plant. We have already discussed about thermal power plant. From the word we came to know thermal means heat energy is converted into electric power. Now from the word hydro power plant, again we should understand in hydro power plants the energy from the water will be converted into electrical power. So let's see. In hydro power plants, water from the rivers are stored by constructing dams. So what is the main necessity of this power plant is setup of the dam. Okay? When we want to set up any hydroelectric power plant, we need to have a dam. Okay? So when this dam is constructed, water will be stored in the dam. This water will be allowed to flow from a height. It will lead to movement of the turbine, and again the mechanical energy will be converted into electrical energy. The concept is same, only to move the turbine in hydropower plants water is used, and in thermal power plant it was heat that was used. So we will see the setup. I repeat what is the working. In this hydropower plant, water will be stored in dam, then this water will be allowed to fall on the turbine from a height, and then due to this flowing water the turbine will be moved and mechanical energy will be converted into electrical energy. So this is the basic idea about working of hydropower plant. Okay? Now again these are some of the examples of hydropower plants in India. We have many hydropower plants. These are some of them. First is Tehri hydropower plant in Uttarakhand. Next, Sharavati hydropower plant in Karnataka. Sardar Sarovar hydropower plant in Gujarat, and Koina hydropower plant in Maharashtra. So we have like this many power plants in India. Let's go further with advantages of hydroelectric power plant or hydel power plant. First advantage is flowing water is a renewable source of energy. This is the best advantage of hydro power plant. We are going to use water. So water is renewable source. So this is a plus point for having hydro power generation. Secondly, it does not cause any pollution. There is no burning of fuel or there is no harmful effects caused. So it is pollution free. Third, the water stored in dams can also be used to control floods and for irrigation. Besides generating power, the water that is stored in the dam can also be used for irrigation purpose, for carrying out agricultural activities, and also for controlling the floods. So these are the advantages of having hydro power plant. Can it have any disadvantages? Let us see. First is the initial cost is high. Now why is this initial cost high for hydel power plant? The reason is there is a need of construction of dam. So the initial investment goes very high. In order to construct a dam, there is a huge investment required. Second point, there is opposed to the construction of dams. You must have heard about Narmada Bachao Andolan or many other examples wherein people do oppose for construction of dam. Okay, what is the reason? Why do people oppose? The reason is, first reason, it causes displacement of people from large areas of land. Whenever construction of dam is to be taken place, it requires a very huge area. So, whoever people are staying, whatever localities are there, they need to be displaced, they need to be shifted to some other places. Okay. So, many livelihood of the people is depending on that area. People carry out many agricultural activities. So, those who carry such activities, they suffer, and there is a huge loss for those people. So, that is why people do oppose for this construction of dams. Next is, large areas of land get submerged and large ecosystems are destroyed. Whenever the area comes underwater after construction of dam, the ecosystem whichever is present in that area, that gets damaged. Okay? And the biodiversity of that area also gets affected. So, this is also one more disadvantage of this hydropower plant or maybe of construction of dams. Then the decomposition of vegetation produces methane gas, which is a greenhouse gas. We know whenever this vegetation comes underwater after construction of dam, underwater whatever vegetation is there, there will be decomposition of this vegetation, which gives rise to a methane gas. Methane gas is a greenhouse gas which will start emitting the heat, it will start radiating the heat, and it will cause harm to the nature. So, these are some of the disadvantages of having hydropower plant or maybe of construction of dams. So far what we have done is we spoke about the fossil fuels, then we spoke about the thermal power plant, and we spoke about the hydroelectric power plant. Now, in today's lesson, whatever we have learnt, let us remember the main points. The first point is, a source of energy is the one which can provide adequate amount of energy in a convenient form. Second point, there are two types of sources of energy, conventional and non-conventional. Conventional sources can be either renewable or non-renewable. Fossil fuel is a conventional and non-renewable source of energy. Water, biomass, wind are the conventional renewable sources of energy. An installation where electricity is generated is called a power plant. So, these all were the points that we have covered in today's lesson. I hope these points are clear to you. The further part of this lesson will be continued in the next session. Thank you one and all.